Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of MTG Sin Senpai. So, I have a few draft decks to go over with everyone today. Unfortunately, my prize packs, I didn't really get prize packs. I did store credit this time around just because I've opened so much of this stuff. But at least for this time around, I do have some decks to go over with everybody. Kind of go give you the breakdown of a few of them, or all of them actually. Kind of go over some of the picks that I made and the decisions that went with the decks. Trying to remember, I believe all three of these were decks that I built, if I remember correctly. I know I've been drafting with my wife recently as well, and some of her decks get mixed in with mine. And this particular time, I think I have just the three that I built. I know that she has two of them somewhere, which I need to get my hands on and figure out where they are at. But doing the breakdowns of these, and hopefully you guys can get some insight on how I draft. Majority of these I did pretty well. I think 3-1 or no 2-1 2-1 1-2 if I remember correctly, something like that. The 1-2-1 unfortunately is what it is. I know this particular deck, whenever I lost, it was very close. And then with this particular one as well, same thing. They were very close games. Even my opponent, whenever they looked at the deck afterwards, because whenever I draft with my buddies, we kind of look at the decks with us, and they're like, "Holy crap! How did I loot, or how did I beat that?" So, there's that. So let's go with my worst performing deck so far, at least for this particular time around. But just quick rundowns. Crystal Grotto, I feel like, is a solid mana fixer. The fact that it comes into play untapped and allows you to scry is pretty good, especially if you're going to go into a three-color deck. This definitely helps. If you're going only two colors, you can probably go without it. But there's that. This one, Armory Mice, I believe it was on the later end of the picks. I did not run it, obviously, or these are the cards that are in the sideboard that I chose not to run. It was a 3-1 for 2 that I typically cut. The Griffin Airy, if you are doing the life gain thing, which is very easily to do in this particular limited format, go for it, run it. Unfortunately, I did not have enough food payoffs or life gain payoffs to make it worth it, so I decided to cut it. This particular card's a little bit nuts. The fact that it is able to kill or essentially board wipe your creatures one butts, and there's a lot of creatures with one butts. Perfect example, this one right here. And then the fact that it ETBs gives another creature you control +2/+2. It's not the worst. It's not the best either. So unfortunately, it didn't make the cut in the long run. But I still think it's a pretty strong card. Glass Casket is an amazing 2 mana removal, especially if it's for things that have the certain mana value. Funny enough, I believe I watched someone do this to a Mother Goose, or I think is that the Geese Mother, or the blue green X creature that comes into play with X+1/+1 counters. But while it's on the board, it becomes just 2 mana value. So it's kind of funny to just Glass Casket it away. It's hilarious, I think. Break the Seal is a pretty solid enchantment removal. So this was great sideboard tech. Impact Tremors, I really wanted to run the red, but unfortunately I had to cut the red. But this, I feel like, is amazing tech, especially in if you're doing the rat strategy, or just token strategy, or just mass playing creatures. This card's amazing. Moment of Valor, I like this card a lot, both as a combat trick or just straight removal. Either way, it's just an effective in the modal that you have with it. It's actually pretty strong. Prophetic Prism, it's a great cantrip and allows you to fix your deck, but that's if you're going 3 colors. Typically, if you go 2, I don't recommend it, at least. But then again, at the same time, you could potentially run it with 2 if you have a bunch of bargain effects, because you could essentially play it, draw your card, and then use it for the bargain cost later on, so it's pretty strong. Archon's Glory, it's a pretty solid combat trick for 1 mana. I personally have not been making, like, it doesn't make the cut for most of my decks because I have other battle tricks I use instead, but it's still a pretty solid battle trick. Same thing with this one. This one's more of a sideboard battle trick. I like the fact that it gives you the +1/+3, so it allows you to save, to avoid most burn spells, and the fact that it gives you that reach is also pretty strong. The Tempting Apple, I like this card a lot. A lot of the times I do it does not make the cut at the very end for me though, but I do like threaten effects, and the fact that not only does it threaten, but it counts as a food, it counts as an artifact for bargain. It can either gain you life, or you can use it to finish off your opponent in the very end. Like, I like this card a lot myself. I'm going to have to keep playing with the set to see if it just, unfortunately every time I've had it, it doesn't make the cut at the very end, but it's there. Raid Bombardment's another one of those amazing red. The enchantment slots in this set have been insane. And Raid Bombardment is one of those that I feel like is just really strong, and if you can get your hands on it, go for it, because there's so many creatures with 2 power, so many tokens that you make. The rat tokens alone with this is just absurd. Speaking of rat tokens in this was a great card, and I was really wanting to go to red, but red got kind of cut off. But if I had gone this particular route, like that Raid Bombardment and Impact Tremors, those are just amazing cards in red to run. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough red to support, so I decided not to run it, which may have been my downfall in the end. Basic Planes, came around at the end, but even though it's a 2-mana 1/3, that essentially becoming a 3/3 whenever you cast an instant or sorcery is pretty neat, and then the adventure ability is not the worst either. This particular card, I don't think I picked this. I think this came around at the very end. I mean, I know that there's the potential with the blue red Spellslinger. I just did not go that particular route this time around. This one's a pretty solid blue creature that I took later on just to hate draft it, because early game you just play as a 1/1 flying 1/1 creature, but later on it's a 3-mana freeze an opponent's creature, or I'm sorry, stun an opponent's creature, so it's pretty solid. This one is very strong in the tap deck archetype. I think I hate drafted this one as well, and that's why I just said not to deal with it. This is actually a pretty decent creature, even though it's 7-mana 6/6. If you bargain it, it's a 5-mana 6/6 trample that gains you life when it ETBs. So it's not the worst. I don't think it made the cut, unfortunately, in the end for my particular deck, but in the end, I probably should have run it, but it is what it is. This is the deck itself. 1-mana Royal Treatment, I think, is an amazing card. The fact that it gives you hexproof and essentially +1/+1 counter. Technically not a counter, but because it's the Royal Roll, it does help. It's pretty neat. It's a 1-mana 2/1 that has upside with the sorcery, so it potentially can give you an extra thing of damage to get in, or just early on it's a turn 1 2/1. So there's that. Excuse me. This particular Human Knight, I really like the Slumbering Keep card. The fact that it's a 1/1 for 1 is, on value, but the fact that it lets you scry 1 whenever you have an enchantment ETB, which is very relevant in this particular set, and the fact that it only costs 3 mana to give it a +1/+1 for each enchantment you control. The number of times this blew out my opponent was absurd, because they ignored or they forget the fact that I could pay 3 mana to pump it. So yeah, I've gotten a couple opponents with that. Tough Cookie, I mentioned it before and I'll mention it again. This card is just amazing. 2-mana 2/2 is already really good. The fact that it makes food is really good, and the fact that it can pay 3 to make another one of your inanimate artifacts or non-creature artifacts into 4/4 creatures is just nuts. Like, I just really like the card, so I ran that. Cooped Up, solid white pacifism that it can exile the target if it's relevant, which that does happen a lot, because a lot of times either your opponents will try to either bounce it with an effect or use fight effects targeting the big creature that you pacifism. So there's that. Decent root 2-mana 1/3 mana dork. That's a mana fixer as well. Unfortunately, I had the intent to go 3 colors. I just did not in the end, but I still ran the card because it's a mana ramp. Welcome to Sweet Tooth. I like this card, and at least in this particular draft deck, I had an idea with it because of one of the cards you'll see eventually. But it's a decent card. The fact that it makes a token, then a food, then gives you +1/+1 counters equal to food. If you're generating a bunch of food tokens, you can essentially have a really big creature. So there's that. I think it's a pretty decent uncommon. Bestial Bloodline, I like this one, even though it's expensive to get the card back from the graveyard. The fact that it's an enchantment aura that you can get back late game that can essentially help you kind of, let's say if you get like a deadlocked board, this could be something that could be in the graveyard to get you in there. Moment of Valor, having multiples of them, that's why I only ran 1. 3 Blind Mice, this was actually my pack 1 pick one, because of the fact that if you get this with the green-white creature, I forget the name of it, but it's a 4-mana 4/4 that you can pay 2 tap it to copy an or enchantment, as long as you don't have another enchantment with the same name, and essentially you can have that come in as a copy of this, and then you can essentially get multiple copies of 3 Blind Mice, because it whenever it says create a token that's a copy of target token you control, the enchantment token that you make from that effect is a copy, so they can just keep targeting each other and keep essentially exponentially making more and more. It's just absurd. There's that. This is a goofy, effectively a 3-mana Eternal Witness and instant speed, Like, end of your opponent's turn, you put the permanent on top of your library, and then you, during your turn, pay 3 mana, pull it from the adventure, and draw that card as well. I like this card as an uncommon. It's pretty strong, at least for the recursion effect in green-white, so that's why I like that one. This card I really enjoy. I did not... there was one time there was an instance where I should have made the 1/1 human token and create the food, but in my brain I'm like, oh, you always have to fetch the land and then get the other 2 effects. The fact that you can ignore the land ramp and just do the other 2 effects is just really good. So I really like this particular ramp spell. Stroke of Midnight, solid removal for anything that's not a creature. Even though they get a 1/1, you can get rid of a lot of problematic creatures or enchantments or artifacts. Just good card. 3 mana 1/3 that makes flying birds. I was with the intent of like having a bunch of enchantments go to the graveyard. I thought I was going to get there with tokens. Unfortunately, this did not perform that well because I didn't get that many tokens to get discarded. Same thing with this particular Savior of the Sleeping. Gets bigger whenever enchantments go to the graveyard. I didn't have it happen often, but it did happen a couple times with him. So I did have a big vigilance creature. The enchantment payoffs, once again, it's a 4 mana 3/4 that could tap down your opponents, and this did help me win a few of my games because I was able to get in there. Knight of Sweet's Revenge, I really like this as just a ramp spell, especially if you're doing the food token aspect. Essentially, you just get a bunch of food, make a bunch of food, and have a bunch of mana to play all your bigger, crazy spells. Besotted Knight, I've mentioned this before. Besotted? I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. I like the roll token, and then the fact that it's a 3/3, that it's not too bad. Getting 2 of them as well is really good. Sir Armont the Redeemer, this card is kind of nuts. I like it a lot. I understand you can't pump himself with it, but effectively it's 5 mana to give you 6 power on the board, because he makes himself a 4. He himself is a 4/4. The +1/+1 roll that he gives, and the enchanted creature that you enchanted onto gets an additional +1/+1. So it's actually really good. So I've had a lot of fun with that. Knightly Valor, initially by itself, like in like a regular aspect, this card is not the greatest, but in this particular set, I think is really strong. The fact that the enchantment types matter, the aura type matters, the token matters, all that was pretty dumb. Charmed Clothier is just a solid creature I like because the roll that it generates, and it's 3/3 flyer. And one of the big payoffs is the Parallel Lives. This card was just... It didn't help me win as many games as I would have liked it to, but anytime that I did have it in play, it was relevant because it did make multiple human tokens, multiple bird tokens, multiple roll tokens, so that the other ones would get washed off and make the creatures that are relevant bigger. It didn't pay off as much as I would have liked, but it did do some good things whenever it did come out on the board. But it's just an amazing card, and I had to build around it because, you know, powerful mythic enchantment that actually was relevant in the set. So there's that. So that's deck number 1. Deck number 2, I'm going to try and go through these faster. I do know it's been a few minutes, but we do got 2 more decks to go through. And then whenever I go through and kind of, it's like I'm repeating spells essentially. With this particular set, even though these cards were amazing, let's just break into them. So it's a 2 mana 2/2. You can pay an addition 2 to give you a sorcerer roll. It's not the craziest, most powerful thing, but the fact that there are other things that make it valuable. Like early game, you can just play as a 2 mana 2/2. Late game, if you have the excess mana, just make it into a 4 mana 3/3 that whenever it attacks, it scries 1. So effectively, if you look at it like that, it's not the worst. And then I did have discussions with my other buddies that I played with. They all misread it and didn't realize that paying the extra 2 mana, you put it on here. You don't put it on another creature. It only puts it on theirself. So that was kind of funny, but there's that. Grasp of Fate is an amazing just enchantment removal spell, which unfortunately I don't believe my deck had white in it at all. Or if I did go white, it was just a splash, so it was not worth me running that particular one. Decent 3 mana 3/3 that gets bigger if you have Celebration. Flick a Coin. I do like Flick a Coin a lot because there's a lot of things that have 1-buts. You're able to essentially kill things. It fixes mana and draws you a card. So I really like this particular, and it's at instant speed. So I like the card a lot, but it didn't make the cut this time around. This is a decent 5 mana 4/4 with haste that during your let's say if you have the 5, 6, 7, 8 mana, that's essentially you could win the game late game because you lock down 2 of your opponent's creatures, play this as a 4/4 haste, and then go in. So it's a pretty decent card. Unfortunately, didn't make the cut this time around. Archon's Glory, once again, that combat trick that just didn't make the cut for me. Not Dead After All is an amazing combat trick. I like it a lot. The fact that you're able to essentially save one of your best creatures and then make it slightly bigger with essentially a loss of life effect on it is actually pretty good. Plunge into Winter, I like it as a combat trick that allows you to draw at the cantrips itself. It's just absurd. I really like that card a lot. Unfortunately, didn't make the cut this time around. Basic land. Commune with Nature, I feel like, I don't know. I know this card can work for you, but the fact that it only grabs creatures, I feel is a letdown, especially the fact that, let's say, turn one, you play this and you really needed a land. I don't like this myself, so I don't. It doesn't usually make the cut for me. Flick a Coin, once again, just a decent card. Break the Spell, once again, decent card. Basic lands. Water Wings, I think, is an amazing 2-mana instant that either you can just get in there with damage or protect something. So it's actually a pretty decent 2-mana, essentially pump spell for blue. So it's pretty neat. This is for that 5-mana value Dex Matter. It didn't make the cut for me. I just had to take it. I believe it was a late game. Aquatic Alchemist, once again, late game. Sleight of Hand. This came around pretty late, and I do remember that this one came late. But it's like, this is just an amazing 1-mana draw spell. So I don't know why that's made so far, so I just decided to cut that, or hate draft that at least. 5-mana 3/5. This one, the fact that it's a fairy is relevant, and the bargain and draining. It's actually a pretty decent creature at 5 mana, so there's this one was good to take, and this one was a hate draft as well, just because it's just straight removal. Actually, no, it was not hate draft because I believe this deck was black, but it didn't make the cut because I believe it was double black. If I remember, no, it's been too long. I should have done this video sooner when these decks were more fresh. But first and foremost, Song of Totentans, or like me and my buddies like to call it, Timmy Ten Toes. Um, it's just an amazing X-Rat spell that it's either a game finisher or it helps you get to the end of the game really quickly. So I do like this a lot. And on the off chance, like me and my friend have joked about it, but we haven't done it, you can essentially just pay 1 red to give your entire team haste. So it's kind of goofy. But this is just an amazing X finisher spell. I would always grab it. Callous Sellsword is something that I really enjoy. The fact that it only costs 3 mana to play it as a 2/2 all in one turn, and depending on how you use it, it'll at least be a 3/3. And the fact that this lets you shoot any target is kind of absurd. You swing with a big dude, and then after you swung with big dude, you can shoot your opponent in the face with it. So it's effectively a fling, but that's better. So yeah, I really like the card a lot. So I'll try and get that every time I'm going black and red. Tattered Ratter is a hilarious card for the rat sub-theme, or rat main theme? I guess it's main theme. It's a 2-mana 2/2, so it's already on value. And the fact that it gives your rats the +2/+0 if they get blocked, it's pretty funny. Oh, I did splash white for, I believe 2 cards in this one, or a few cards. But Spellbook Vendor is just an amazing 2-mana 2/2. This card's absurd. If you get this, you always take it, and the fact that it's in foil is pretty as well. So I decided to take this and run it as I forced the white in my particular deck, but it was definitely worth. The Evolving Wilds, just a solid land fix, especially if you're doing the 3-color. We had Ash Party Crasher. It's a pretty solid 2-mana 2/2, especially if you can get it to celebrate and get that +1/+1 counter. So I really like that card a lot. For the aggro theme, the Merry Bards is a pretty solid 3-mana 3/2 that either makes himself bigger or can make someone else bigger with the young hero role. And the fact that they read ETB, pay the extra 1, so you only have to pay the extra 1 if it resolves. If someone decides to counter it, you don't pay that extra 1. So I do like the way that those are worded. Edgewell Pack, I really like the card. It's a 4-mana 3/3 that makes a rat. So it's 4 mana for 4 power, and it procs Celebration really easily. I do enjoy the pack. It's a pretty good card, and it's got the Menace. Gnawing Crescendo, just a solid 3-mana pump spell for your team that, if it's a non-token creature, just replaces them. Just one of the best, I think, team pumps possible. At least in this particular set, it's just really good. Torch the Tower, solid 1 mana, deal 2 damage, or deal 3 damage and scry 1 if you bargain. Just a crazy good red removal spell. Minecraft Daredevil, it's a solid 3 mana 4/2 that allows you to have a combat trick from the adventure. So I like that a lot. Cut In is just an amazing 4 mana. It's limited, potentially just limited is where it's really good. But the fact that it lets you kill something and make potentially one of your creatures even bigger is really great. Virtue of Loyalty is just a game-breaking card. If your opponent doesn't have an answer to this, it just gets absurd, and you start to just essentially just steamroll your opponent. It gets completely one-sided. I really like. I got lucky with this, and I definitely pushed for that. The Moment of Valor, solid either combat trick we've just discussed a few times. Timmy Ten Toes himself, or Toten Tans, the Sworn Piper, solid 3 mana 2/3 that it replaces himself as well whenever he dies, and the fact that he gives your rat or your attacking rats Death Touch gives your 1/1 token rats even more threat there. Tale of the Age or Tale for the Ages is an amazing anthem effect, especially with that spellbook vendor. That's just an insane combination. Just essentially pay one, give any one of your creatures +3/+3. Absurd. I really love A Tale for the Ages, and because there's so many things that give the aura roll tokens, it's just a great card to run every time. Grabby Giant, I really like this card. The fact that you can make that treasure at instant speed, and then effectively in the next turn, if you do it turn 2, you can turn 3, play him for 4/3. Or the fact that he has the late game mana sink, sack a land, or an artifact to draw a card, I really like that card a lot. Return Triumphant is a pretty fun card at sorcery speed that allows you to essentially reanimate something that costs 3 or less. One of my favorite plays to do would be to reanimate an Ash, because what will happen is if you reanimate Ash with this particular card, Ash will come in, put a young hero roll on herself, and it will already get Celebration and swing in essentially for 4. So it's a really fun little 2-card synergy that I really enjoyed, and I pulled that off a handful of times. Ginger Brute, solid 1 mana, 1/1 haste, just gets in there for damage. Cooped Up, Pacifism once again. Cheeky Mouse, 2 mana, or 2/1 for 1. Kellen's Lightblades, I do enjoy this particular combat trick. The fact that it can either deal 3 damage or just straight destroy the thing, depending on if you really need to bargain it or not. Witchstalker's Frenzy, I like this instant a lot. The fact that you can use it offensively or defensively, I know most of my friends that I played with have used it offensively, but then there was a couple of times that I used it defensively. They swung with 3 creatures. I paid 1 to kill the biggest one. They're like, oh, that's right, you can do that defensively as well. So the fact that you can use it both ways is pretty solid. I like the card. Charming Scoundrel, I like this card a lot, especially the fact that it allows you to effectively, the modals is really good, and 2 of the 3 modals give you Celebration right off the bat. So either you mana ramp and fix, or you can just get in for damage, or you happen to loot and fix your hand. It's just really good, or not loot, but rummage. And then the Ratcatcher Trainee, solid 2 mana 2/1 with first strike on your turn. So value wise is already alright. The fact that you can do it as a celebration at instant speed, so end of your opponent's turn, make 2/1/1 black rat tokens, or for celebration you can also make the 2/1/1 rats and just get in with celebration. I do like that card a lot, especially at common, so I do value that kind of highly. So that's 2 decks down. We got 1 last deck to go. This particular deck went 2/1 as well. This one I know I got mana screwed. Oh no, I didn't get mana screwed. I went against a control player that just happened to draw all the answers whenever they did beat me. But I feel like if I had gone a little bit farther, I might have been able to 3-0 with this particular one, but it's okay. So we're breaking down into the picks. This is a pretty solid 4 mana 4/3 for trample, and the fact that it can at instant speed give one of your creatures a monster roll token, so +1/+1 and trample. It's not the worst, and not the best obviously, but still not the worst, and it's actually pretty decent. Both combat trick and just beater on your end. Frantic Firebolt, solid removal spell if you absolutely need it. The fact that it incrementally can get bigger. Early on, it's just 3 mana to deal 2 damage, no big deal. But late game, let's say you've played 3 or 4 spells, that's 3 mana, 6 damage. Kind of absurd. So yeah, there's that. Minecraft Double, we've talked about already. Shared Animosity, if you're doing any kind of tribal synergy of any kind, this is just an amazing card to run with it. Especially if you're doing rats. I mean, it's perfect color for rats. Unfortunately, the way the deck was built, I wasn't really geared toward one tribal, so I decided to cut it. Curse of the Werefox, amazing 3 mana fight spell. The fact that it gives your creature +1/+1 and trample permanently, and lets you fight a dude is pretty good. Flick a coin, I'll go over and over again with that. Bespoke Battle Garb, I do like this card a lot because I'm a big fan of the celebration mechanic. It's pretty easy to, especially in this particular set, it's a lot easy. It's very easy to just play two things in one turn and equip this for free. Very rarely am I paying the 2 mana to equip this to a creature. It's more often than not, I'm playing a couple cards, equipping free, and then swinging in for damage. Raid Bombardment, amazing card in this particular set. I actually got two of these in this particular deck, so this is the second one and I had to cut it just because I didn't like having two of these in play. Amazing, but there's other enchantments that I comboed it with, and I decided to cut the second one because if I have two of these in play but no creatures, it's kind of redundant. So I decided to make at least cut one of them for now. Moment of Valor, solid removal spell, but I believe I strayed away from white. Fiery Emancipation. This one is actually my pack one pick one. I was intending to use it, but after condensing down the deck, I curved out at 4 mana, I believe, if I remember correctly. And so this one didn't make the cut, unfortunately. But I am planning on making a Eldraine, the Pyro Hammer deck. So this is actually going into that one. And of course, it is the nice borderless art. So I'm going to definitely run that for that deck. Unfortunately, this one didn't make the cut. Unassuming Sage, once again, solid. The Reindeer, I did not run because I believe I geared away from white in the deck itself. Plunge into Winter, we've discussed. Commune with Nature, discussed. Feed the Cauldron, I do like this particular removal spell. The fact that at instant speed you can use it as a combat trick, or if you really need to, you can make that extra food on your turn if you play it on your turn. And it doesn't say when on your turn you play it, as long as you do it during your turn, so you do it during as a combat trick on your turn, and then make the food. So it's pretty solid. Land. Soul Guide Lantern, I believe this was later picks. I picked this over a basic land, I believe. It's decent, but not in this particular limited. I'd never ran it. Callous Sellsword, unfortunately, I had to cut it because I just did not make the cut in my deck itself. And Rat Out is it's a goofy little removal spell. The fact that it's a -1/-1 and makes a rat. Because of the sheer number of 1-butts and the other combat tricks, it's a pretty solid one. Unfortunately, it didn't make the cut for this particular deck. I mean, I probably could have ran it instead of that, or this instead of a couple other cards, but I did go with the end result, and I still like the way this deck came out. Number one, so this is one of 2 white cards in this particular deck. I've already discussed why. It's just an amazing 2-mana 2/2 that just can effectively pump your team, so that's a great one. Tough Cookie, and now that I'm looking at this is this the deck that I ran? This is the deck that I ran. That's why I didn't run these. I didn't run black. This was green-red with a splash of white, so that's why. Anyway, getting back into it. Spellbook Vendor, solid card, moving on. Tough Cookie, once again, solid card, moving on. Harry's Spear Guard, it's a 1-mana 1/1 with haste that replaces itself, and effectively, because of some of the cards that I ran, it was extra damage, so I decided to keep that one and run that. It was really good. Grabby Giant, kind of discussed, makes that treasure, gives you the 4/3. Ferocious Werefox, discussed it. If I remember correctly, did I have? Yeah, I had multiple, so I could only run so many. The Bestial Bloodline, once again, is a decent effect for the auras that you can play late game again. This card is an all-star, and the fact that I got this in foil just looks super nice. And 5 mana makes 2/2 knights with vigilance, and then 3 mana gives it's a 2/2, but it gives your team +1/+0 and haste until end of turn. So it's effectively a 3 mana 3/2 for a turn. But if you're able to play both of these at the same time, that's what 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 mana makes 3/3/2s with haste all in the same turn. Absurd. And the number of times it says won me a game by one turn playing 5, making the 2/2, next turn paying the 3, making the 2/2 with haste. This card's an all-star in the set, and every time I see it, if I'm not in the colors, I'm going to hate draft it, and if I'm in the colors, I'll probably pick this over rares most of the time. Just this card is absurdly, and it's nuts. Return from the Wilds. Once again, just a ramp spell that's pretty solid. The fact that it's modal, and like if it's late game, you can just get your creature and your food, so you don't even have to worry about getting the ramp. Troublemaker Ufi, I really like this. Is it O for Ufi? I could be. I'm like, let me know if I'm wrong. Regardless, I call it Ufi. And it's a 2-mana 2/2 that's already a solid bear, and the fact that you can bargain and exile an artifact or enchantment is just nuts. And in this particular meta, having some kind of answer to artifacts or enchantments just main board is pretty solid, and it's just a 2-mana 2/2 that gets upside. Curse of the Werewolf, already discussed, pretty solid removal spell in green fight. Ratcatcher Trainee, amazing card, especially because I'm trying to generate as many bodies to swing in as possible. Speaking of making as many bodies as possible, Impact Tremors, effectively every time I played this, it dealt like 5 to 10 damage, give or take, depending on the game. Goblin Bombardment. The fact that I got these two together was absurd, and the number of times that it was just bad, either bad blocks for my opponent or bad attacks on their end, because I can attack when they attack. I just shoot things in the face with the Spear Guard, and then the Impact Tremors and Goblin Bombardment, which happened multiple times. I would swing in for 1, deal the 1, sack it to Goblin Bombardment, deal an extra 1, deal 1 damage from the Impact Tremors, and then sack the rat again to deal an extra 1. I was able to win the game because of that. Just having those like all together was just nuts. Scarecrow Guide. I like this as a 2-mana 2/1 filter ability. Yes, you can only do it once, but if I'm only splashing for very minimal white cards, it was a solid splash, or a solid use of the splash. I like Ruby the Daring Tracker. The fact that you can potentially make her a 3/4 pretty reliably is not too hard. And it's a 2-mana 1/2 with haste, so it's already pretty good. And it's a mana ramp, or mana dork, so I like that. Seasonal Growth, it's just a solid enchantment, especially if you're playing a bunch of creatures. And the fact that there's so many effects that allow you to target your creatures, be it with the pump spells, the aura spells, all the effects, it's just kind of nuts to effectively scry and draw. So just the card selection and card advantage that this generates is just really good. Archon of the Wild Rose is another card that I decided, that's the second card in white that I played, just because it's a 4-mana 4/4 that's already flying, so it's already on value. And if if your creatures are enchanted by auras, they become flying, base power and toughness 4/4, nuts. And so with the Spellbook Vendor, nice combination of the two cards, great. Redcap Thief, I believe I've mentioned in the past, just a solid 3-mana 2/3 that just generates a treasure that allows you to mana fix, mana ramp, and do celebration all at once. Trainee, once again, good card. Immodane's Recruiter, 2 of them in the same deck. Yeah, I'm sure you guys are seeing it with the last few cards. It makes sense. The second Rainbow Bombardment, so the number of times I'll swing in, do damage with that. Just all the red enchantments are so good. Frantic Firebolt, I ran one of the 2 just because I needed other removal. Torch the Tower, so good. And then Redcap Gutter Dweller in this deck was just absurd. But yeah, that is my 3 decks. I think of the 3, I personally enjoyed this one the most, just because it had the most fun interactions, in the fact that I would play this guy, Impact Tremors would trigger, I would swing in, Raid Bombardment would trigger, and then, after everything's done, I'm just going to Goblin Bombardment and finish the game. Like, the number of times that those lines happened was just kind of funny and absurd, and even my opponents are like, oh, well, we're done, and we had 30 more minutes left in the rounds. So yeah, it was a fun time. Lots of fun decks, lots of fun to play these. I did get a promo pack, which I did already open, unfortunately, because I opened it with my wife. But I at least have this promo code for you guys to enjoy. My wife kept hers because she's starting to get into Arena as well, but at least here's one for you guys. I do have a couple, I believe, pre-release kit codes still. So here's a few more for everybody as well. Oh, there's a bunch. There we go. Let's see if I can get them all on the screen at the same time. There you go, guys. Hopefully you guys can see all of that. For whoever gets these, good luck to you. Hopefully you get some amazing cards from it. If you do get something good, let me know. I'd love to know if you guys get something good from that, because I mean, I'm getting back into Arena just to grind, to be honest. But if you guys get something good from these, let me know. I'd love to know if you guys got them or not. But yeah, that's everything. Look forward to the next couple videos. I am trying to scrounge money together to possibly get a collector box sometime soon, but at the moment, no, don't hold your breath on that. But I will be working on that. And yeah, overall, thank you again, everyone, for taking the time to watch the video. I appreciate you. If you made it to the very end, especially with this long one, thank you again so much for taking the time to watch the video. Please do take the time to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. I know my channel has definitely grown a lot more than I've anticipated. I believe I've only been doing this for about a year now, and I have, so many videos out there. But thank you again, everyone. I appreciate the fact that there's so many people that even watch my channel at all. So thank you again, guys. I can't thank enough. But yeah, thank you again, everyone. Y'all enjoy the content, and whoever got those packs or those codes, good luck to you. And never forget, Senpai didn't notice. Good night.